How you doing, guys? Alessandro here from Spicy Moustache with some new tips in order to help you creating your own green space, indoor or outdoor. Today I'll talk about something that really got me into gardening and hopefully is gonna help you as well to convert into this amazing world. I've got inspired to start gardening thanks to my grandpa, who taught me everything about our living soil and all the different ways of gardening without using chemicals, but instead cooperating with nature. Most of all, he was absolutely proud about his chili plants, imported from all over the world, but mostly from Brazil, where he met my grandmother. When I was a kid, I remember that I couldn't even go near this freshly harvested and sliced open chilies without having a few tears coming down. However, growing up, I developed more and more interest into eating and growing chilies. This is why moving to London gave me a sort of extra push to create an area where soil and living creatures are kinda coexisting together. And every time I spend time there, I disconnect from our daily routine, which is pretty stressful. So click that like button, and today I'll show you how to make your own chili plants in the hope to convert you into this amazing gardening world. When we talk about chilies, you usually hear the term Scoville. Scoville is a measurement to determine the spiciness of peppers or hot food. This scale is usually mentioned as SHU, which means Scoville Heat Unit. Created in 1912 by the pharmacist Wilbur Scoville, which basically added capsaicin from a determined pepper to increasingly amount of water sugar until the tasters could no longer detect the heat. Basically, how much or how little was needed to render the capsaicin tasteless decided the pepper's number of Scoville heat units. However, to sum this up and make it easier, I will just divide peppers in 4 main categories. So the first category, it's mild or low heat, which includes the famous jalapeno and goes up to 10-15,000 on the Scoville scale. Medium and hot, like the famous cayenne pepper, and it goes from 15,000 to 100,000. Hot, which includes anything from 100,000 to 350,000. If you're not used to chilies, that will start to burn a lot. And last but not least, super hot. I highly discourage anyone to try this if it's your first time with chilies. And if you like spicy food, I would recommend to microdose it. This last category goes from 350,000 up to 2 million on the Scoville scale. FYI, a chili pepper spray goes from 2 million to 4.5 million. It's best to start growing chilies in January-February if you're planning to move them outside. But if you got enough space indoor, you could literally start them anytime. I'm starting some in December, but I will start the majority of my seeds in January. For this video, I selected a few of my favorite varieties that you could potentially find on my website. I'm actually running a promotion until the end of December, and for every order that you place, you're gonna receive a free packet of seeds. To germinate my seeds, I usually soak them in chamomile for 12-24 hours. The reason why I do this is to loosen up the shell of the seeds and help them for a better germination rate. Also, chamomile, it's antiseptic, which means I'm gonna reduce the chances for bad bacteria and fungi to create any sort of damages on my seeds. To germinate your seeds, there are actually different ways that you could use. For example, these Jiffy pellets are high quality substrate compressed into small discs, and they then get soaked in water, rehydrated, and they raise in size, and it's all held together by a fine net that basically ensures that there is enough water-air exchange. Root Riot cubes, it's another great way to germinate your seeds. They come pre-soaked in a tray that it's ready to use, and once you have your seeds germinated, you can then transplant directly into soil or hydroponic. My personal preference is potting soil, in this case BioBee's Light Mix. It's an organic pre-mixed soil that comes already prepared with perlite and a light fertilizer, and it is absolutely ideal to start your seeds. There are many other substrates that you could potentially use to start your seeds, but this is what I prefer, and I'm gonna do a side-by-side growth that you can follow on Instagram, and I will also post updates on my Facebook account. However, for all three methods, I usually mist water on the top and I never let the substrate dry completely. The main things to speed up your germination process are humidity and temperature. You need a temperature of at least 21 Celsius, but ideally you would go for something around 28 Celsius, as it's the perfect condition to germinate your seeds. I highly recommend you to buy a heat mat to place underneath your germinating seeds. There are many different versions, and you can find one pretty cheap on Amazon, but I will attach a few links on the description of this video so it's easier to source it. Alternatively, you could use any source of heat in your house, like for example an internet modem or a running computer that you leave on for the whole day. That's gonna recreate the perfect conditions as well, but you won't have total control over it, so I recommend to keep an eye on it. For the humidity, you could use zip bags to place over every individual seed, or you could potentially use a plastic box that you seal completely. It's really important that the humidity level is as high as possible. If you're planning to start many seeds over the winter, or if you want to start your outdoor garden indoor, I recommend you to buy a propagator. I personally use a Vitopod. It comes with a thermostat that you can set the temperature and it keeps it constant, and also you have different vents all around that you can open, so in this way you can release the humidity. I usually put a layer of parboiled rice at the bottom of my Vitopod, so I can kinda dissipate the heat that comes from the bottom and avoid overheating. You could potentially use perlite as an alternative to parboiled rice, but I think that personally it's a more sustainable way to use rice, because once you finish to use it to germinate your seeds, you can then boil it and use it to collect bacteria, as I explained in one of my previous videos. You don't actually need something like this to germinate your seeds, but so far it's the best thing I ever used. Also, if you would like to monitor temperature and humidity, an hygrometer works really good. But we are finally answering the main question that everyone was waiting for. How long is it gonna take to germinate my seeds? Well, it all depends on the right conditions, and also the hotter the pepper, the longer it will take to germinate. As a rule of thumb, usually it takes between 5 days to 1 month to germinate your seeds, but in most case scenario, if the conditions are right, it's gonna take you around 2 weeks time. I think growing chilies is one of the best things I ever tried. Thanks to that, as I said, I got introduced into gardening, and I'm really happy every time that I harvest even a single chili, because that pays off for all the hard work that you put behind it. I would like to recommend you this amazing book called Red Hot Chili Growers. I'm gonna add the link in the description of this video. It's an amazing book that's gonna help you a lot to grow your chilies, and also is gonna explain you all the different ways on how you can use them, or how to dehydrate them and how to preserve them. There is also a Facebook group specifically about chilies that it's called Fairness and Crosses, and it's managed by Ross Barber. They're gonna give you great advices on how to grow your plants and how to have a great harvest out of your chili plants. So if you like this video and you would like to see more, just subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification settings so you can be notified every time I post a new video. I'll see you next week for another episode, and thank you very much for watching. See ya!